So yeah, you've done a lot of traveling there. How many countries have you been to then?
That's a good question. I think probably less than I would assume.
Okay.
Because there's been a number I've done multiple times, like Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of my best friends, she's from Spain, so we went to Madrid a lot and different places. Because it's nice to go when you have somebody that's local, has friends that are local, and you get to go to places that others don't know of.
Non-touristy places.
Exactly, and they know and with her it was great because her family are season ticket holders for Real Madrid.
Oh,
so
that's why you went.
That's it. That's the only reason. Me and there's three of us that went to university together, and when she was like, "Let's go to Madrid," we were like, "No." And she was like, "And we'll go to Real Madrid." And we were like, "Yes." No, I'm joking. It's all love. But other than that, then I started solo traveling probably back in 2016, and I went. I had like a week off work. And I knew I wanted to go somewhere, and I hadn't decided where. And I thought I was going to go somewhere like Portugal. And then the day before, somebody told me, "Oh, Copenhagen's really nice. So why don't you go there?" So I just changed my plans and hopped on a plane to Copenhagen. And it was really liberating being able to go somewhere completely new on your own. And it's almost like that new school feeling. So, you go to a new school and you don't have your old friends, and you have to almost re-realize what is your baseline personality and how do you kind of interact with people. And then it kind of became not a bug per se, but you really appreciate that sense of being able to experience a new culture and meet people and just spend the day exploring new places. Not only did I gain an appreciation for the different places I started visiting, but then being in London, as you guys know, you grow up here and you just assume, I know London and there's no need to see the UK too much. You start appreciating what the UK has to offer.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I got to the point where I wanted to do a bigger trip. And so I was fortunate enough to take a sabbatical from work.
Okay.
And before COVID, so at the end of 2019, I was due to go off for a year. And so I went to India for 3 months.
Wow. What time did you go to India?
So it was in November 2019. But I started off in the south. And I was doing the opposite trail run to most people, because obviously people started in the north when it's warmer and come down south as the seasons change. And they're looking at me being like, "Why are you going up when it's cold?" And me, I'd never been to Punjab when it was cold.
Okay.
And so I didn't expect it to be as cold as it was. But I started down south in Kerala. So I flew into Trivandrum and spent a month there learning to teach yoga.
Oh, wow.
And it was a beautiful experience because I'd never explored India, let alone on my own. We'd done it when we were younger with our nanny, and we'd gone on kind of a trip around India visiting the major gurdwara.
Okay.
But we were 10, 11. You don't remember too much of it.
Yeah.
And this time I got there and got to see the beautiful aspects of India in each of the regions. So I started in Kerala, spent a month learning the yoga, then moved up, went to Goa. And Goa is a crazy place. It's beautiful. And I think you realize the impact that tourism has had on it. And it became a really stark contrast to Kerala, where I'd kind of gone off the beaten track, and we were in a village that I think we were like the first tourists to visit. So there were very few people that spoke English. Yeah. And you're walking around and everybody's trying to invite you into their house because you're new, and they're like, "Come eat some food, have some jar," and a lot of coffee there. And then after Goa, I went to Mumbai, and I was doing everything by train. So on the trains, they'd see just like a guy on their own, and all these families would be like, "Come eat some food with us." It was beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's so lovely that that's just an integral part of Indian culture, Like, don't worry, come sit with us. Let's talk. Let's eat.
So was it like proper backpacking?
It was, I had one big backpack and a smaller one on the front with like the important stuff, so I could keep an eye on it. and yeah, it was proper backpacking, and you realize how little you need, because I had 6 t-shirts, a couple of pairs of trousers, and I was due to go for the year. I lasted about 6 months until lockdown started, but I never felt like I was missing things. Maybe when I got to colder areas, I thought maybe I need a jumper right now. So I bought a jumper, but for buying the jumper, I got rid of something else.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just wouldn't fit in the bag. And that was great, because then when I came back, I realized I'm just overcrowded in my life with how much things I just kept over time. And that decluttering is just such a nice feeling.
Yeah.
You get to realize that you don't need too much just to live a simple life.
Yeah.
And be happy.
Like that minimalism, right?
That's exactly it. And there's a big movement towards that. Like you had the Marie Kondo recently. She did that show where she was
on
asking,
Netflix.
what brings you happiness? Does this bring you joy? And it works surprisingly well. And like I've moved to a new place recently, and I'm doing this thing where I've kind of got an understanding of, I've put away a lot of stuff and didn't unpack it. And I'm kind of leaving it 6 months to go through from winter to now. And if I don't use it, then I'm just going to get rid of it, because 6 months is a lot of time, I realized. And if I've not used it, then there's a part of my brain which is attaching myself to it and saying, but what happens if I need it at one point? What happens if I need it? But that's the easy way to gather things.
I think that was a key point you made about simplicity as well, right? And just on that point, you said that you learned yoga then in South India. So who did you learn from then?
Yeah. So I'd picked a school that online, doing just some research, and it seemed really authentic because it had not only the yoga, it had some Ayurveda. So the kind of holistic lifestyle practice that was kind of started in South India. And I got there and we had a few different teachers. We had somebody that taught us 2 different forms of yoga. And then we had an Ayurveda teacher, and they were all really authentic. They'd grown up in the local region. They'd either lived in ashrams all their life, or they'd been doing things like Ayurveda all their life and become doctors in it. And so they were really strict, which is part of the reason I wanted to go to India to do it. Because with the Ashtanga teacher, for example, it wasn't, oh, well, do it this way if you like. It was, here's the way it's taught, because it's been taught this way for thousands of years. And this is how it works.
So what teacher was that?
This was my Ashtanga teacher.
Okay, and what is that specifically then?
Yeah, that's a useful point. So I'll go back into the kind of history of yoga a bit.
Okay.
Yoga, I guess the earliest examples of it are from about 5,000 years ago in terms of written text, where they find it in the Rig Vedas. So, in Hinduism, there's the Vedic scriptures. And so they found it in the Rig Vedas and references to yoga, but not so much as we know it now. And from there, you kind of had the next era, which was where the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita came to be. And they went into a bit more detail again there. And that was more about the philosophy of yoga and yogic living and karma and what this means, living out your dharma and bringing that to life. And then post that era, it came to what probably can be described as the classical era. And that's where what we see now as yoga originates from. And so there's somebody called Patanjali, and he brought to life Raja Yoga. And so there's different forms of yoga. Raja Yoga was one of them. And there was Bhakti Yoga and 2 others, which I can't remember at the moment, but they'll come to me. And Raja Yoga kind of had 8 limbs to it.
Okay.
Is how they describe it. And these limbs kind of ultimately led to Samadhi, which is, ultimate realization, awakening, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it.
So we have something similar in Sikhi, right?
Exactly.
Samadhi.
It's the same thing. And, in the West, when I when I first came across yoga, and all I thought of it was body movements, workout. And as I started reading more into it, Raja Yoga has these 8 limbs where it's actually a whole way of life, and the physical movement of the practice is only one aspect of it. And primarily that aspect of it is in order to partly cleanse the body, but also to be able to sit down for longer periods of time to do your meditation, to do your part, to do whatever, so that you can sit there and not feel like I'm in pain, I need to move.
It was very practical then.
Exactly. So the limbs went with yama as the first and niyama as the second, which are cleansing practices. So it's things like not lying, not stealing, no sexual misconduct, right? No committing harm, no abusing alcohol or drugs, any of this. So you're doing the work to clean the mental state first. And then it moves to asana, which was the third. And that's where we come into yoga asanas. And that's originally there were 84, which created hatha yoga, the first style. And so you'd have these 84 postures, and those 84s were the core ones we need to know as humans. But it's said in the Vedas and the scriptures that there's 8,400 actual poses, asanas, and they all link to the animal kingdom. And kind of ultimate realized beings like Krishna and the others, they'd mastered all of them. They knew them all. And the 84 that humans need to know had then been laid out. And so you come to asanas, and then once you've done the asana practice and you can sit down and you can be without feeling that pain in your hips and your knees everywhere, you move on to pranayam, so breath work.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's in so many different spiritual practices now, pranayam, and and you know how powerful it is, not only for kind of working to cleanse the body, but bringing concentration.
We hear about it in Sikhi as well with the Siddhs, and they used to like use it to prolong their life.
That's it. When Guru Nanak was talking to them, and they used to slow their breath down because they thought they had a finite number of breaths to live their life, so they'd slow it all the way down.
Yeah.
And scientifically, it kind of also makes sense because, you know, you slow your breath down, you move into the parasympathetic nervous system, you calm your body down, all good stuff. And so you kind of work through the pranayam, you become, again, even more concentrated, and then you move forward. So you've kind of got to the fourth, and then you go to pratyahara, which is almost like the releasing of attachment and sensations. So, and the way that I would see that, and this is all the way that I see things from my learnings, up to date, still learning, is how do you understand sensations that are happening and almost realize that sensations happen and they are not you. If I hit my shin against this table now, it will hurt, but then I'm not hurt forever. You know? Like there's a sensation of pain for now, and that sensation's come up and it will go away again. And how can I realize that in every moment there's sensations springing up and then falling back away, springing up and falling back away? And how can I almost objectify what's happening in that sense?
So try to understand everything's temporary.
Yeah, impermanent, and see reality. And that's the real kind of great thing about it, which is at the base level, all you're doing is realizing what's happening in more detail. So you're not trying to say, oh, you need to see something that's not there. And this is the amazing thing about Sikhi, Hannah. You got, it's all about your own experience. Experience it and you'll see. And that's all it was kind of showing you, which is just start experiencing reality for what it is by cutting out external noise, and you'll start seeing what sensations truly are, what feelings really are. So that was the kind of fifth step. And then you move on to concentration practice, dhyana. And then you move on to meditation itself. and then finally you reach samadhi. So there's 8 steps of getting there, and it's not like a linear progression.
Anji.
No, there's all the plays and tricks of life that come with it.
Yeah.
And that's where the concentration gets even better. And I like to see it as cycles constantly. As you work through the cycles, you move up like a vortex or a cyclone.
And what's cool is that there's actually a story of Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj Ji when they went to Sri Lanka and they met a king there called Raja Shivnam, and they spoke about these kind of concepts as well. So I talked about, it's got it in front of me here. One was Hatha Yoga. So do prakar da jog. So there are 2 types of yoga they talked about. One was Hatha Yoga, which is more kind of along the lines of penance and putting a lot of strain on the body. And the other one was more to do with Bhagat yoga. So that was more to do with the Prema Bhagati, the loving devotional side, and just talking about that as well. So I didn't want to go in too much into that, but just given that kind of context, even Guru Nanak Dev Ji talking about this stuff as well. But just one of the points that you made earlier about, I guess a lot of people today kind of take yoga as just being this physical exercise that many people do. And I think for many years I thought that as well, until you do a bit more research and you realize that actually it's way more than that. And there's a lot of overlap, again, with things that we can see in Sikhi, like when you talked about dhyan, or you talked about first kind of cleansing the mind because it's very, we say mela, it's very dirty, right? So we call that manurupi panda. It's like literally our mind is like a bowl, but it's very dirty. So before we can fill it with the Guru's amrit, the Guru's blessings, we first have to cleanse that, right? But I thought 2 points that we can focus on, that just because there's so much, right?
Yeah, of course.
And maybe because it sounds like you just so much you're talking about. And it's amazing, and it's so much. But one point maybe on the physical side, if we can focus on that, because like you said about people sitting there for longer and meditating, I know a lot of people struggle when it comes to sitting down.
Like me.
Yeah, that was a question that you pointed to me and sent to you. So then, how can people listening at home who are struggling to sit down for long periods of time, what advice could you give to them, or maybe on the physical side, but also mentally as well? Then, if you could just tackle those both points.
Really good questions, and ones that I struggled with and still do. So a good way to kind of understand that is just think about what's happening to your body as you go and sit down cross-legged. And so you're like turning your thigh out and then kind of abducting it. So there's rotation and turning it out. And then you're bending at the knee and really compressing, like axial compression at the knee. And if, like most of us, we're used to sitting in these chairs and we sit in them for a long period of time during the day. I think the average last I saw was something like 7.7 hours.
In the day?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We're just sitting down like this. Our bodies don't use those muscles, don't use the ligaments, and our bodies are special in the way that they work on a use it or lose it kind of system in terms of that mobility, that movement. So I guess the one point or the 2 muscles that I bring attention to in that point is you've got like the piriformis and the gluteal muscles, and they're kind of on the back. So they're going from your sacrum into the big thigh bone, the femur.
You should explain those bones and muscles.
Yeah, so
it's
your
been a long
sacrum.
time since I heard those
words.
Since biology in year 10 or something.
So you have your spine, right? And let's say I've got my skull sitting here, and then I've got my spine that runs down from the base of the skull into the cervical region, then the thoracic spine, then the lumbar spine, right? And then at the bottom of the lumbar spine, you have your sacrum, which usually is about five bones that are like fused together.
Okay.
And then you have your coccyx, which are 3, 4, 5 varies bones that are also fused together. So your coccyx is like that tailbone that everybody references.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the hip region now that we've got?
So yeah. So we're moving into that hip region. And so you have to think that pelvic tilt that happens. So your pelvis is sitting here and you go to sit down and it kind of moves like this, right?
Mm.
And you've got a movement forward as you go to sit down. But what that does is your lower back kind of rounds as well.
Mm.
So when you're sitting down, you have less what we call lordosis off the back versus when we're standing. But the natural spine has like this like forward curvature in that area of the spine. So you want to try and protect that because that's the natural spine.
Mm.
And so there's a few areas that can create problems there, right? And so before kind of just going in and saying, oh, well, I feel really tight in my hip when I sit down cross-legged, or I feel pain over here, what's useful to understand is what makes up that area, because the pain doesn't necessarily point to exactly what's happening. It could be something else that's happening that's creating that problem.
Yeah.
Right. So you might feel some pain on the side of this pelvic region here, but it doesn't mean it's coming from there necessarily. It could be, but it couldn't. So then you just have to think, okay, well, if I want to go to the Gurdwara and sit down and do my part, or even in the morning during Amrit Vela, and you want to come down and you want to sit down and do it, do Naam Simran, and then do the part, and then afterwards say you want to go back to Naam Simran, and you're like, well, I actually today I'm feeling like I want to do like 2-3 hours, just go, right? It's so difficult. The pain will come. So how can we help with that? And you've got strengthening and stretching, right?
Okay.
And you want to strengthen and stretch the muscles around that area to provide the support. And so you want to strengthen your core because you're holding yourself up, right? And strengthening your core doesn't mean I'm going to get a six-pack. I mean, many people want it, but like you want to use it functionally. And that functional aspect of it is to support your back, to support other regions, right? It's all like a pull and push with the body. And then one muscle that I neglected a lot because maybe like male bravado kind of thing, right? The glutes. I was like, I don't need to work glutes. What are they for, right? But they do so much for your hip and stabilization. You know, like if I'm walking, my glute muscles, which are 3 muscles, they're the ones that stabilize my pelvis.
Okay.
Right? So even just simple walking and stuff like that, they stabilize it all. They're the ones that do a lot of the rotation and they help with that region. So with increasing the time you want to sit down, take it slowly and progressively load as you would do in the gym. So don't go and just go, yesterday I sat 15 minutes, it was good. Tomorrow I'm sitting 45 minutes and it's better. Right? And we have that tendency.
Yeah.
More is better. Quicker is best. Yeah. That kind of thought.
Yeah.
And it's just take your time. Right? We're in no rush. Just take your time and then build slowly. So a few minutes at a time maybe, and see how you feel, and constantly take that information in. Because information is key. So don't judge the information. If one day it feels bad, that's good. You were conscious enough to understand what it felt like. How often do you like go through the day and recognize what your body's feeling right now? And then once you started progressively overloading, make sure that you're sat properly. Right? So what I would recommend for most people is having your sitting bones or your bum lifted compared to where your feet are. Right? So I sit on either a meditation cushion or a yoga block at home. And in the Gurdwara, we can't do that. But at home, you can do that just to support yourself.
Yeah.
And what it does is it means my hips aren't, my femur and the hip joint isn't like raised up like this.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not in flexion. I can release some of that pressure.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people that they have like these cushions where it's like a triangle shape, isn't it? And then it just supports them when they're sitting down. They can sit for very long, man.
You'll be surprised how much difference it makes. Yeah. And it also helps the back then because I can then, like I was talking about that curve in the back, you can almost tilt your pelvis out and your sacrum out and sit down and maintain that curve. And that helps your back stay like in one line. And almost like there's a string at the top of your head that's connected to the ceiling. Right? You just imagine that like lightly holding you up and your spine just kind of all lands on top of each other and just sits nicely.
And that's important as well because again, like we're saying, then you can sit for longer. And then when you're trying to do your part, you're trying to do your meditation, you're able to focus, right? One thing that helped me a lot, I think, was definitely not sitting on the sofa too much as well, like you said earlier, right? Because like even right now, but it's okay, 'cause it's only for a podcast. But otherwise, this like I'm kind of leaning to one side, right? So then I think that way, like you start to get tighter. So that could be, I guess that could be no reason why. What are you doing throughout your day, which is causing you to have that pain? And so even now at home, for example, I'll sit on the floor. Like I'll put like a gumble on the floor because I've got hard floor laminate. But then I'll sit on that, and I don't get back pain now because I'm not sitting on my bed leaning on the pillow or leaning on the rajai or something like that, right? So that helped. And I think another thing that helped also was just sitting down for longer. But like you said, over a long period of time. Like it's been about like 6 years now since I came into Sikhi. So like, 6 years of slowly adding, a bit more time here and there. At the start, it killed, like especially my knees.
Yeah.
I got over back pain after a while, but definitely knees were the worst. But I think just throughout the years, I now can sit for 2-3 hours just comfortably and have no issues. But I think time is another important one as well, right?
So key. And it's such a good point you make, which is like you look at that period, 6 years, right? Now, when you look back at it, you're like, oh yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it didn't seem that long, and it was so worth it, just continually. And it's not only time, but it's keeping up with the practice, as you do with anything.
Like consistency.
Consistency is key.
Definitely.
And such a great point about like varying it up during the day. So as with most of us, we're working from home.
Yeah, especially now with COVID, right, as well, right?
Exactly. And so it's so easy to sit like I was doing at my dining table.
Yeah.
And then move from the dining table to the couch, right? And then move from the couch to the bed. Done. My day's done, right? We can't get out. We can't do much. I'm missing out on all the walking. And so what I did was I bought a floor desk, right? Which is just one of those like, almost like a kid's desk.
Yeah, I've got one as well.
Yeah. And they're great. And I've set up a screen so that I can have it at a good eye level. And then bought some padding for the floor because I've got laminate floor. I tried it and I just...
I should have done that as well. I'm popping this in it. Got a gumble in it. Should use the...
I'll send you a link.
Oh, thanks, bro.
But it means like after an hour, rather than just sitting like I would on a dining table and just sit through the day, I get up and I move. And then I'll get into different positions. Maybe I'll sit in something which is called Vajrasana, which is like both my knees together, tops of the feet on the floor, and like a zigzag kind of thing. I'll just sit like that for a little while, which is opening up the tops of my feet and giving me a different way of sitting, releasing the hips. Or I'll sit in a low squat. Right?
Okay.
And some of those poses are incredible because you're putting yourself in a position where I guess the body finds really beneficial, especially when you look at the joints. You mentioned knees, even the hip, the ankles. They're what we call like synovial joints. And so they have, basically they'll have this fluid, which is the key thing to remember, like a synovial fluid, hence synovial joint. And with that fluid, it's what gives all the nutrients. So there's two things. It lubricates the joint, like oil for a car or my bike chain, right? I'm going to lubricate it. And it also delivers nutrients and blood through the joint. And so the way to keep those joints healthy is through moving it and putting compressive forces on it, right? Slowly building it up, but almost similar to muscles, because what happens is the kind of cartilage in there, as you put compressive force in there, it kind of squeezes, and it's like almost the water in there. Imagine like a sponge in a bucket. You squeeze the sponge in the bucket and it releases the old water, right? So it's getting rid of the old stuff. And then you release and it sucks up the new water, which has all the new minerals, everything else it needs. So that's what you're doing when you're going into these positions. And if you guys want to look more into that, we're so lucky to have so much useful stuff to hand with the internet. There's a guy called Knees Over Toes guy, who's been getting a lot of kudos recently, because he's kind of breaking the way of thinking. You know, like, as you know, when you go to the gym, people are like, "Oh, you don't take your knees over your toes when you squat.
Yeah,
it's
I've
bad
heard
for you,"
that as well.
right? And he's just proving that that's not right,
Mm.
right? And that's where like the functional aspect comes. If what you're doing mostly during the day is going to be requiring you to have your knees tight, right? Like
Yeah.
sitting down for a few hours,
Or driving for so many hours.
driving
as well,
for
right?
so many hours, what you need to do is work with what you need to be doing.
Yeah. Basically, everyone is different, right?
Yeah.
So even like when it comes to squats and stuff and that technique, everyone's got a different technique. I remember learning about as well. Even like if you look at your bones as well, right? There's the length of maybe your femur, I think it is
Yeah.
something,
Femur
or your hip joint.
Yeah.
Would all affect your stance. And so like literally everyone is kind of different, and the way you treat everyone would be different as well when it comes to that stuff. So that was more about the physical side then.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Definitely people have got a lot of things they can take away.
Yeah.
I think some of the key points definitely is that if you're at home especially, I think that's one way of kind of like, you know, like when you're a kid, you have those bikes. What are those things called on the side again?
Training wheels.
Trading wheels.
The tricycles.
No, when you have like it's the normal bike.
Oh, stabilizers.
Stabilizers. That's what
The
it's called.
The training wheels. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like stabilizers. Is it called training wheels as well?
Yeah, same thing.
Probably from your days, isn't it? Even I'm older than him. That doesn't make no sense. But as in like maybe at home sitting on a raised kind of platform, because that helps as well, right? Like the legs are lower, but the main body is higher. Then when you go to the other side, it's a bit easier, and then you can focus, because the last thing I remember when I first came into Sikhi was like you go for that smargam, got your favorite kirtanies there, but you can't sit because your knees are cutting. Or everyone does this after a while. They start grabbing their knees and they're like they're holding their knees, or they got one leg up or one leg down,
hug.
right? So the leg hug, right? So that helps as well. So we talked about that stuff, and about over a long period of time, it kind of helps, and what you're doing in the day, right? Especially if you're sitting down all the time, especially now due to COVID. But in general, we do tend to sit a lot anyway. If you've got a job that requires driving, then taking these things into account. So I guess stretching helps a lot as well.
And there's like a few key stretches, you know, pigeon, and you can vary the level at which you're doing it. So if you're really tight in that, and you can't do maybe I could put a link or give you a link.
Yeah, I was going to say give a link, so I don't know how to show a pigeon right now.
Yeah.
Just when you go grab me a pigeon from outside, right? That doesn't mean that.
Yeah, I don't want a pigeon here.
Yeah, I got bad jokes as well, just to let you know. So you're where's this? Why did you talk about actual pigeon?
Just had like PTSD about a pigeon flying at me.
No, not in here.
But you kind of allow that stretching on the piriformis specifically. And if that's really tight, you do it against a wall, and you kind of progress again, always progressive overload. You just slowly build it up until you're doing it at level where it's at hip height and you've got your leg up, and then you go fully into pigeon. So those are really good. The squats, like staying in the low squat as opposed to up down squatting.
Yeah.
Just get to the lowest position in a squat. And if you can't do that without your heels coming up, roll it up and put it under your heels.
Yeah.
Right? And try and get to that low squat position. Doesn't matter how much you have to roll up. Like when I started, I was rolling up the edge of my yoga mat, or even this jumper, I just roll it up and put it under my feet, and then just stay there and aim to do like 2-3 minutes a day and up that, not like straight away, but like do 30 seconds split during the day. Those two exercises start with, and be conscious. How does it feel? Does it feel better? Does it feel worse?
Yeah.
And then work with that.
I think we can probably make a video on this, you know?
Yeah,
maybe in the future, if you're...
Of course.
Definitely. Let us know in the comment section if you want a video on
if you want a video
on a pigeon.
of me squatting on a pigeon.
How we want to put it, but
but just showing the practical steps, you know.
Definitely.
It'll be helpful, I think.
100%.
Definitely.
And then just quickly on that point, then maybe more on the diet side, then, because I know when I spoke to you the first time I ever met you, you're telling me about your diet and that you love eating fruit and stuff.
Yeah.
So what is your diet like, and why do you think it's a good diet for you to have then?
Diet's one of those things that splits a lot of people, you know. For me, so similar to you, about six years ago, I had like a really deep spiritual experience where I was in meditation, and after that experience, the next day, so before then I was eating meat, I was everything, and the next day I just didn't want it. Like it had just gone and left. And I was like, well, that's funny. Like no more. And slowly then I
Well,
realized.
since then you've not had meat since then.
I mean, there was once where I ordered like a wrap.
Okay, then
And there was some meat in there.
Yeah.
And I realized after like 2 bites, went in the corner and cried.
It's happened to all of us, I think.
Yeah.
That's the risks of eating out, right?
That's
You
it.
don't know what's actually in your food.
Yeah.
It could happen many times, but you never know,
Yeah,
right?
especially when it's closed up.
Yeah.
And then it was just trial and error. And that's one of my like favorite philosophies of like a childlike mind of trial and error. Like when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, I'll try this. And if it doesn't work, who cares? I'll just go and try something else and find what fits. And
a lot of your spiritual journey was like that, right? It's just trial and error.
Yeah. And, it's amazing to have a teacher. I think when you have a teacher, it's clear. And trial and error works as well. But you go through all these loops.
Yeah.
And it's funny. And with the diet, I kind of started trying one thing or the other. And when you first go into something that's like no meat, the thing that I would do is go straight to like meat alternatives.
Yeah, that's what I did as well.
Yeah. And we were talking about this, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I didn't realize much difference because I'm just eating more stuff that isn't really great.
Just Linda McCartney, basically, innit?
That's it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes, it's been a long day and I'm just going to take out a Linda McCartney pie and put it in the oven.
All the sausages, yeah.
That's
We
it.
all have them.
That's it. But gradually I started realizing more and more, like whole foods just made me feel so good. I loved the color on my plate.
Yeah.
Carrots, beetroot, like anything. Yeah. And we're lucky with like our food. Like mum would cook me dal and whatever I wanted, and it's just naturally plant-based.
Yeah.
And it's tasty. Yeah. And it's one of the easiest cultures to be vegetarian or vegan in. Or plant-based, and I just found that worked really well for me because I like found it anti-inflammatory. I wasn't feeling so heavy in my gut. I had loads of acid problems when I was teens to young adult, and that started going away. Like acid reflux, constant heartburn, all that stuff started going away. My skin wasn't as oily, and probably partly because I then started drinking more water as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I was eating more fruit, which is heavily water-based.
Yeah.
And I started switching out sweets for fruit because I just started really enjoying fruit. And that's the best thing about going to like places like India or warm countries where they've just got tasty fruit and veg.
Yeah, the bananas there are so much sweeter than here. It's crazy that the taste difference is so much.
So much. Mangoes.
Yeah. It's probably my favorite fruit. I think everyone loves mangoes.
Everybody loves mangoes. Everybody loves mangoes. Pineapple.
Yeah.
Like all this kind of stuff, which is heavily water-based, right? And so when you think about, oh, do I need to drink my 3 liters of water? You can eat it too. Watermelon.
Yeah.
Right? Even stuff like cucumber, tomatoes, you're getting your water content in.
Actually, Gursik sent me an article recently. It's quite interesting because it's explaining that we can live off an omnivore diet, but our bodies are actually optimized for, is it frugivore?
Yeah, frugivore. I mean, it swings one way than the other, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'd probably say I'm biased towards saying plant-based, right? Because that's my life and a lot of people around me.
Yeah.
And so I'll look for an article that will agree to my bias because that's just
true.
That's just the way it is, right?
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, confirmation bias. But then I also appreciate, like, for some people it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. They need other aspects and other things that will help their body. And like high fruit diets, if you're diabetic, right, it's not going to work for you, right? So switch that out.
Yeah.
The frugivore thing is interesting though, because the definition of fruit and what you class as fruit is anything that's seeded. So stuff that like is like courgettes, right, aubergine, all this kind of stuff technically falls into that, because when you get like raw organic homegrown stuff, you'll see the seeds in there.
But it does also cover like herbivore veggies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's all linked.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said. And when you think about the key nutrients that we need in our body and what you get from stuff like leafy greens, right? Your vitamin D, for example, and how important vitamin D is for the strength of our bones, as well as kind of the function of so many different parts of our body. Like so many of our organs have these proteins which gather vitamin D. And so beforehand, we used to think, oh, well, vitamin D is good for bones because what it does is it allows calcium to be let out in the bones, right? And now they're finding more and more like things like the pancreas and all this kind of stuff, organs, the heart, where there's loads of vitamin D receptors because they support different organs in the body as well. And you get that through food and you get it through the sun.
Yeah.
And I think especially for like Apne Indians living in the West, we're like used to having so much sunlight. So that's why it's really common to have vitamin D deficiencies.
100%. Yeah. And I'm sure, like, do you guys feel different when you go to India or anywhere with a lot of sun, right?
100%.
And suddenly you're just like, energy.
Yeah.
Right?
That's like my top up.
Yeah.
To go aboard, get my vitamin D top up, innit? Then come back.
I've noticed personally, my skin, everything gets better.
100%.
You were saying this because I had really bad eczema at one point as well. And Viju said to me as well that just go to India and you'll just get better, and it would just go in there as well.
I'm sure. Not only the sun, but probably like, depending on where in India, like the pollution levels in the air and stuff like that.
You're definitely right though, because even diet as well. Because once I clean up my diet and stop eating too many liver carne, sausages and pies and stuff, like
Sorry, Linda.
No, please don't sue us for this, right? But just everything started to clear up as well, right? Not just physically, but also you could say mentally as well, right? Because we were doing some research into this, but I was even asking somebody about this last week as well, about the different types of food and how they affect us. Because a lot of these kind of foods, and the key word they kept using is simplicity, which is what you said earlier, and I picked that out because it's such an important point, because we're talking about it from every single aspect of life, because it's a lifestyle, isn't it, at the end of the day, right? Because even the idea of like, going out and just taking a walk, like then you get your sunlight. Because now I look at how, like recently the weather's been really nice, right? Yeah. But it's like I'm always indoors looking outside thinking, I should really walk.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the car, right? Because I've got so much work to do or something, innit? So I'm making an excuse and stuff like that. But I think food is very important, and the idea of simplicity, because a lot of these foods like fruits, nuts, whole grain and stuff like that, right? It all comes under like sattva, as in like, like the three types, right? Sato, Rajo and Tamo, right? And just some of the notes that I was sent, I thought I'd just share is like these kind of bring about calmness inside us, peace, balance, which is really cool, right? Because again, a lot of times we are our balance inside us as well, purity. And when you have certain foods that are more like Rajagun based, then we feel a bit more agitated, restless, and insecurity and passions. And then Tamogun, we can feel a bit lethargic, which I can feel a lot. Laziness, procrastination. Do you know that one?
It's true, because if you eat like pizza or something, heavy cheese-based thing, you're going to feel really lethargic. You're not going to be able to meditate.
No. And there's so many similarities, right, with the Ayurveda, which is Tamas, Raja, and Sattvic.
Yeah.
Then they apply it to the three doshas, Kapha, Pitta, Vata, right? And it fits exactly like that. So you have root vegetables that are heavy, right? They ground you. So somebody like me who's naturally high energy, wanting to be bouncing around, right? If I feel like I'm too airy, because I might have had too many, this is for Ayurvedic, I might have had too many legumes and beans, which bring air, which means I start getting really airy and spaced out. I need to have something that combats that. So something grounding like root vegetables will ground me down. So you can play with it in a way that helps, or you can overdo it and go too far one way. Too much spice, and you'll build anger.
Yeah.
Right? You might have noticed that yourself. Like, you eat spicy food.
Yep.
Right? And you'll feel heat inside your body. And that just kind of builds on things that you don't even realize.
Anji, and just to support that, just to give some examples, because people are like, what are you guys on about? What is Sato, Tamo, Gun, Rajo, Gun? Give us some examples. Like for Sattvic foods, you have fresh fruits, green leafy vegetables, nuts, grains, fresh milk, certain spices.
Yeah.
But then for the Rajo Gun, then you got spicy foods, tea, coffee, fried food, foods with a lot of white sugar as well. And then we've got the Tamo Gun, a non-vegetarian diet, alcohol, stale food, foods with high levels of fat, oil, onions, and garlic and stuff like that, right? So again, these all affect our mood and the way that we think. And then even when it comes to actually trying to sit down to meditate as well, right? Going back to the point, I'm trying to just tie it all in when we talked about the mental aspect as well, right? Because again, the food that we're eating is having such a big effect on us that when we want to sit down and meditate, we're so focused in that moment. Why can't I concentrate? But it's because of all the factors of what we've been doing throughout the day that have all led to us now in this moment not being able to concentrate what we're doing. So literally it is like a lifestyle. And it's cool because Guru Sahib Ji naturally had this in place for us, right? So if you look at it physically, again, there's many ways you can look at it, because obviously 500 years ago, 300 years ago, the whole of society was very different, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, we naturally were doing jobs that were more labor-based and physically out there walking, right? You get to walk everywhere. Like now, I drive everywhere, right? So things that even Guru Sahib Ji promoting physical fitness. So like our second Guru promoted wrestling, right? Guru Angad Dev Ji. So they'd have in Khadur Sahib, which is in Punjab, it was called Malakara. So it was actually an arena where the Sikhs would wrestle for 3 hours a day. Right, in the afternoon time for 3 hours, or even the Guru themselves would go and wrestle as well. Right, so that was promoted by the second Guru. Right, so that's like the physical aspect. And then when it comes to the types of foods they eat, for example, like Guru Amar Das, third Guru, they eat a very simple diet, which is of khichdi. So khichdi is dal and is lentils and rice, right? Dal and chol basically, right? And like they'd have dalia, oats basically, right? Porridge, but they'd have no loon in there. Right, no salt in there. So it's very simple diet that our gurus would follow as well, right? So you can see that is the physical aspect. You can see from the food aspect, even the warriors, like in Guru Har Gobind Sahib's time, our sixth guru, who was seen as the first, like more on the warrior side, right? Picked up the swords and fought battles, 4 battles. Even when they had one soldier called Pende Khan. So they literally adopted them from a young age, right? He was from a Pathan background, so they were warriors, right?
Yeah.
So when he was adopted, the uncle said to Guru Har Gobind Singh Ji, like, look, if you're going to keep them here, just make them into a warrior.
Okay.
Don't let them do anything else, just make them into a warrior. And their diet was, they were given, Guru Har Gobind Singh Ji gave them 2 buffaloes, right? And they literally have, one of the like staples in their diet was buffalo milk with pistachios and almonds. Right, that was like what, and you can see in that it's got high protein content, high fat content, high carbohydrate content. It's very nutritious anyway, right? And they always say badam is good for the brain. I heard that yesterday as well from one of my teachers. They go, for the next lesson, make sure you eat a lot of badams. I was like, oh, that sounds boring, right? So you can see this throughout. You know, it's already there in like foods like dal and sabjiya, which for a lot of time I didn't want to eat.
Yeah.
I was like, why don't we eat dal? Why don't we eat gajar and sabji and stuff like that, right? But you realize how nutritious they are and how good they are for you, right?
Totally, totally. And that's totally right. And simplicity is just key. Just biologically, it also makes sense, right? Like in the morning at Amrit Vela, you haven't eaten, your body's rested, your stomach's empty. I'm sure you'll find concentrating is much easier than after dinner. Yeah. I've just had some roti and I'm going to go sit down.
Yeah.
Right? Your body's working on digesting. Right? Your body's not quiet.
So this is where the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems come in, right?
Yeah.
Can you go a little bit into that? Because I remember learning about it a long time ago. So like, is parasympathetic when you're resting? What? Rest and digest, right?
Exactly.
And then sympathetic is when you're...
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, you've got your nervous system, and then you have like your central, which is brain and spinal cord. Then you have your peripheral, and then one of the branches of the peripheral kind of drops down into the autonomic, right? So that's where the sympathetic and parasympathetic kind of come into it.
Yeah.
And you've said it perfectly. The easiest way to remember it is fight or flight, sympathetic, parasympathetic, rest and digest. That's because then the nerves that are in the parasympathetic nervous system, they do a few things. They do things like lower the heart rate. They slow you down. They'll constrict the airways, right? So your breathing becomes shallow and slower and restful. They do things like activate through the salivatory glands and lacrimal glands. So it like creates saliva. It works with your eyes as well. So as you slow your breath down, naturally your body starts understanding. It's taking input in. It's like, this person's becoming relaxed, right? Slowing down. Oh, because of that, I'm taking information in, going into my central nervous system, going into the control power and being sent back to say, help the slowdown, right? We don't need to do the fight or flight thing because there's nothing to run away from, nothing to fight. So let's become calm. Let's lower the heart rate, right? Let's lower the body noise and let's help concentration. Let's help relaxation. And that then the battle is not to fall asleep, right? Like keep concentrated. And that's why I like concentration in Sikhi as much as everything else is big. Like, and that's why with a lot of meditative practices, they start with concentration practice so that you know how to continuously keep awake, but single pointed. Then you can build insight.
Yeah.
So then just with that point, then it might be, I don't know if it doesn't go off topic, but so just with that point then, if you eat, wouldn't you be more relaxed then? Or was it just that fine line between being too relaxed or?
I think what it really comes down to is when you finished eating, like you'll feel good, right? It's what happens with the body after that, right? Like you're gonna kick off the digestive process. You're probably gonna feel very relaxed, right? This is why loads of people feel that slump after going to sleep because of the chemicals that get released in your body, right? Glucose levels, everything that starts saying nap time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to help with doing your part and being concentrated for meditation or Naam Simran, right? Because that's more sleepy, fatigue, tired, as opposed to restful, concentrated, switched on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys have felt the difference at times, right? When you're sleepy and your head's nodding, right? Versus like, oh, I'm really calm and just in the zone. And it just takes, again, that trial and error, right? Of just finding what is the difference. And I'll keep coming back to that, which is take information for what it is. It's perfect. Everything is just happening as it is. Take the information in and use that to go forward.
And just on the diet, I think for a lot of us living here in like the Western countries, we have such a rich diet. But then it reminds me of when I went to India a couple of years ago, I met a Santa there called Bhagat Jaswant Singh. And he used to just like live really simply. And like anyone that used to come and stay with them, they would have to adopt the same lifestyle to fit in. And he would just give like raw chole, just boiled it. Chickpeas, no masala, nothing, right? And no butter, nothing with your roti. So it's a very simple diet.
Yeah.
And a lot of people couldn't hack it. But then just speaking from personal experience, when you go to India and you have a diet like that, you feel the difference after even like a week. You feel the energy, you feel such a big difference from living like here, you know?
100%. And if you go on any kind of, same as going to India, there's retreats here as well and retreats around the world, like Vipassana retreats. And what they'll do is you'll eat the last meal at midday. And for the rest of the day, you won't eat anything. And all of the meals are like really clean. And after 10 days of eating like that, and you have it's intermittent fasting, isn't it? Like you eat between 8 and 12 and that's it. And you have 2 meals in that time. Yeah, it's night and day in terms of how you feel with your body. It's just, you sense the quietness in your body, which sounds weird, but it becomes more tangible when you experience it.
And I guess it makes sense that like the gurus, they recommended living this like sattvic life, right? not only in your actions but your diet, and it all helps. All these factors help in terms of meditation and spirituality.
100%. I mean, who knows better than the gurus, huh? Like so it's best to then take that on and just to experience it, and again, give it time to experience. It's different if you do it for one day, right? You're not really gonna feel that benefit because your body has to work through everything that's been built up in it.
Yeah.
So like that's why it's good to do things for a slightly longer period of time in order for it to actually take effect.
And just leading on to the point then about your studies as well then. So you're studying, what are you studying right now?
I'm studying osteopathy right now.
Okay.
So, yeah, part-time to hopefully, you know, go on to mix that with the yoga and osteopathy together.
Okay.
Just generally to, like for me, when I growing up played a lot of sports, I kept fit and healthy. And then kind of carrying on with that, I started learning a bit more about the body. But I still found I was getting injured and feeling pain in my body, especially as I was growing older, right? And when you think about the body and you think about the muscles and the skeleton, it's crazy to think that after 20 something years, you're feeling, it's not feeling right. Like if I got let's say I got a new phone, right? Whatever brand you want to call it. Nowadays, they're pretty similar. And the general life expectancy of that, right, would be, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, let's say. Yeah. Imagine after 1 year, it just starts crashing and breaking down and losing your information. And you'd be like, what is this? What's happening here? Right? But our bodies are meant to last, like, they do degrade, but they're not meant to degrade by the age of 20, right? Yeah. 20, 30. How many of us now do we like start feeling pain? Like for me right now, I injured my neck, right? And even now I have a bit more knowledge. I kind of knew what was going on. But it got me thinking, why is that happening? And how can I work with that? So I went to see an osteopath. And once I'd seen the osteopath, I went traveling. And when I came back, I thought, there's a lot of yoga teachers out there, right? Doing great things. How can I offer the most whilst, you know, doing this? And so I thought bringing osteopathy and yoga together, you get to give people a chance to experience through the yoga, but bring the osteopathy to say, here's how this actually works so that you can then learn and play for yourself. Yeah. Just go home and play. Like become the child again. How fun was it when you were a child and you were just, I don't know, rolling around, learning how to somersault and all this kind of stuff. And you're just playing around with your body, learning new things. And we kind of lose that as we get older, right? Because like me in a park on a summer's day, I'll go and I'll be like doing that stuff. And
on
people
your skateboard.
On my skateboard, yeah. I fell off it the other day, but we'll not talk about that one. But in the park, I'll be like practicing handstands and doing like random stretches and movements. Or get a slack line and put it up right between two trees and try and balance. And you'll get two or three people come up and be like, that's really cool. Can we try? And they'll try it. And then eventually people just start coming up and wanting to try it. And because that natural inquisitive feeling is in us. And so just go along with it and you'll realize like how much joy it brings first, but how it starts improving your ability with connecting with your body.
Just on that point, then even like I think it's important that we do that because now like because we're sitting at home all the time, then we become a bit more stiff and rigid, right? And then when we go outside and we play sports after a long time, then we end up injuring ourselves and we get all these aches and pains. I remember walking the other day to the Godra, I was walking back thinking, I'm so unfit now. I can't even walk to the Godra anymore. Literally, I was like, I bet it's because you know, now we just sit indoors all day and we just play computer games or just sit on the laptop, right? And we don't go out and do these physical stuff. And so it's cool because we're pretty much the same age. And I haven't done that stuff for like 10 years. We'll
go to the park sometime.
I'll say yes to you, but I guarantee when it comes to it, I'm busy, bro. I can't do it. But no, it's definitely important to do that stuff. And that links a bit onto the whole idea of holistic health then as well, because I know part of holistic health, I was doing research into it. But one aspect is a physical side, right? Which is very important, but it's made up of different different factors, right? When it comes to holistic health. So can you just list them on just just the idea of health then? And
yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you do this, like the research beforehand, it's so good. Like for me, going into things, I'm always like, I should do this research. You're so good with it. So
well, he is. I don't do it.
I'm sure you put
do it
yourself
for a
down.
living, so I have to, innit?
Yeah,
Make sure.
true. So the holistic health thing comes particularly for osteopathy because, like in the late 1800s, that's when osteopathy was formed as a like a medical profession. And the idea was you kind of can't just look at something in isolation with the body and think that that's how you fix it, right? There has to be a number of factors that come into play. And part of that is the musculoskeletal system. Part of that is like the viscera, the internal organs and how everything's working, the heart, the cardiac rhythm, all this kind of stuff. How do you bring all of that together with diet, with mindset? So biopsychosocial, right? Like now a lot more research is being done into that and thinking, how much does mindset have to play with how you're feeling in your body and what illnesses come from that, right? Which is why like you do more part, more meditation, more Naam Simran and everything, right? You feel lighter, you feel better right? Almost instantly. And that is doing its work. So for the holistic side of health, I know we'll talk about like what health means as well, right? But you've got physical health, right? And that's keeping mobile, moving, stretching, working out. And working out doesn't mean go to the gym and lift some weights over my head. Working out is whatever working out is for you. But doing it in a way where you're increasing the heart rate, getting the blood pumping, right? You've got diet, and we've touched on nutrition and diet, right? Mindset is a big bit. And that's one of my like key factors because that was the key driver for me, where I was like battling with depression after university, and I got to a point where I kind of realized like, what am I going to do with this, right? Like one of my friends had like passed away, and I just thought, what is this leading me down to, and what can I do here? And that's where I found meditation and yoga. And through meditation, where you kind of build the mindset and then I got more into like experiencing different religions and understanding the philosophies and what they have to bring. And ultimately it led me back around to coming to Sikhi with a whole new perspective and being like, whoa, there's like so much truth here, right? So much like incredible knowledge. And so that's a huge bit.
Do you want to just go down that quickly on that route then? Just about this whole mindset, then about your journey then? I know it's going off a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
Like you said that you looked in, so was that like the big kind of change in your life then when you, during university and your friend passing away?
Yeah, I think that was like a pivotal aspect. I think if my friends that have known me over that time and my family, there's like two different sides, not only of me, but my relationship with with everybody around me. Not only people that I know, but people I don't know. Like my outset on a relationship now is like, as soon as I meet somebody, they're a loved one, right? And it's such a nice way to see the world. Like,
I got that feeling from you when you first met us. I already knew you.
yeah, and it's just, but we all do know each other, huh? Like, just in like, we all believe in reincarnation, right? And you think about how many lives we've reincarnated, right? We will know each other.
They say that like the people that you know now, you've definitely got a relationship, some sort of sanjog,
Some karmic.
Exactly.
from previous lives. So we've all met each other.
That's
definitely
it.
Before,
Exactly.
Maybe we used to skateboard in our last.
We used
life.
to. That's it. Maybe we invented skateboards. And yeah, and I think the way that I see it was, I had this feeling that I was like scraping the bottom of the barrel at that point. And that's what made me realize, it's like, there's nowhere else to go. So I was like, I just remember sat there one night, like I'd moved to London. I was so fortunate to have like my family and friends around me who just like are love, right? Just love. And I found myself just sitting on the balcony, and I had this realization that I just hit the bottom, and I was like, wow, so this is the bottom. So there's nowhere to go now. So what is there to do, and what does this feel like? And as I look back now, I realize that those nights where I used to sit on my own for hours, just overthinking, overanalyzing, which went on for years, and it was like a slow form of meditation, right? With no direction. So it was leading me everywhere. I was just being led by this. And there's a really good picture called the Zen ox herding diagram, and it's like this bull, and you're looking for the bull at first, and that's the stage that I was at. Like I knew something else was out there, right? Because previously in my life, I had this experience of like weightlessness, of pure happiness, right? That was attached to nothing, and that's what kept me going, because I'd had this experience, and I was like, that experience is out there, and I know it because it was so true to my heart that it was what this is about. That right now it's muddy water. And then I found meditation. And
how did you find meditation?
So it was actually through a friend predominantly. So there was a couple of friends. One of them is a neurologist now as well. Really cool work into the science of meditation on the brain. And we just ended up finding each other at a time where both of us were kicking off this journey, and both of us knew nothing about it. And so it was like exciting, because it was like, let's go do research and catch up like every few days and talk for hours about the research that we've done, the practice that we've been doing, and whether it feels like it's going this way or whether it feels like it's not. And then if it's not, and both of us agree on that, let's like move again and try something else and keep incrementally building until we find people that will also help us with that, and keep growing and building that community and learning of people. And then we started reading different books. Like there's some incredible books around how the brain works and mindfulness that I'd recommend to everybody, because they have so much to offer. Like there's The Mind Illuminated by a guy called Chuladasa.
Okay. And
Chuladasa is like his given name, but he's a PhD scientist, and he kind of just explains mindfulness, and it's this massive textbook, but it's great because it just walks you through it. And we used that as a base concept, and gradually I started realizing that there was so much attachment in my life, right? An attachment to anything and everything. And because of that attachment, I was working myself up constantly. And that was just creating suffering, like constant suffering. And so then I started working on sitting with it. And that's how it started with that night. And sitting with it and letting it happen, right? And seeing, like I was talking about before, like the sensation is happening. But if I'm watching this sensation, that sensation is not me, right? And then I questioned, who is this I that's talking in my head? And you kind of just start flicking back and noticing like it's just shining a light on more and more and more. And you keep doing that until you get to a position where there's this vast expanse of open awareness. It's just letting things come. And you're not attached to it being any way. Like something will come up, whether it's a good memory, a bad memory, a good emotion, a bad emotion, whatever good and bad means. And it just comes up and it goes away. And that's totally okay. And you just let it happen. And suddenly I was just like, wow, I just can let it happen. And I don't need to do anything with that, right? I can do something with it because I don't want to just sit there letting it happen. I've got a job, I've got family, right? So then that was a completely different perspective. And then the second bit was realizing love for like Vaheguru, for God, right? And that like Vaheguru knows everything. I've got nothing to hide because they see everything and they still love me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like there's nothing else for me to do. I could just like love back and then love everything through the same way.
Mm-hmm. Just one line that comes to mind when you said that is Satguru mera taak liya. It means that the Guru, as in Vaheguruji, has like covered all my like negative qualities. Mohe papi parad. I'm such a big sinner, but they just discarded all of that. They don't even look at any of that.
Yeah.
And even earlier, what you're saying about just seeing it all, it's like you're just witnessing it, but you're not that. Right?
Exactly.
We're the Atma, right? With the soul. And all this stuff is just seeing it. And the word that they use is sakshi, means to witness.
Yeah.
Right? So that's really cool. And then so from there, you know, I know you looked into other religions as well, and you thought, how did you do this like big 360 then of coming back to Sikhi after all of that?
That's a good question.
So was your family like a Sikh family, or was it just like Punjabi Sikh family, or how did they work?
No,
I know your Nani ji was quite religious.
My Nani ji is very religious.
Yeah.
And she taught us a lot about Sikhi,
Mm.
and not in a way that was kind of like you have to do this, right? Which I think is often like the way that she taught us allowed us to learn it, right, and not feel like we had to learn it.
Yeah.
But she made us do the part and learn Punjabi and do everything. But my family are very religious, although I think they'd also seen that I wasn't doing anything wrong, right? I wasn't going out there like, I don't know, selling this and that, right? I wasn't
way to think about that.
But I wasn't going out there. I wasn't going out there like kicking people on the street. I wasn't doing any of that. I was like, I think they'd also, I mean, you'd have to ask them, but from my point of view,
We'll ask him after.
yeah, ask him. There was like love that was flowing out of me. I definitely felt that. Like my appreciation for everybody around me became like there was like a barrier that was let go because I started loving myself for what I am, right? Which is just pure aware love. And then I started realizing that everybody's pure aware love. So I could just love everybody as pure aware love, right? And then it like there's a really nice quote about like treating humans as trees by Ram Dass. And he says, I like to practice treating humans the same way as I treat trees and look at trees. As you walk through a forest, you look at one tree and then the next, and you don't judge one tree compared to the other and say, look how crooked that tree is. Why is it growing this way? Look at those roots. Look at those leaves, right? You walk through a forest and you're like, fresh air, beautiful trees. So I like to treat humans the same way. Everybody is their own tree, right? I was like, that's awesome. Let's do that. Or let's try and do that. And so then, like, as I was learning more about mindfulness and meditation, which is where it started, the route traditionally led through to Buddhism and Hinduism. And so I got into learning more about Buddhism and started volunteering. There's a really nice center in Bermondsey. I don't think they're fully open up again right now, but they have a cafe and a little library, and you can go in there, and the head monk is a beautiful, beautiful lady that knows a lot. And so I'd go and volunteer there and just start taking on more knowledge and really could feel the understanding of the core components, because it's different. It's not really a religion for Buddhism, right? They're not theistic. They don't believe in one God. But the Buddha was 2,500 years ago, was born into a royal family.
Yeah.
And when he was born, the king had all these oracles, and the oracles had all said, this son of yours has the opportunity to become this incredible being, right? And everybody was like, yeah, you could keep him at home and he could be your son and become the prince and become the king, or you can let him see the world and he'll become this incredible being. And apart from one scholar, and this is a story that I heard, and I've not checked it up, so maybe it's not right, but one of the oracles said, it doesn't matter what you do, this person is going to become the next Buddha. And the concept of Buddha is like, we're all naturally Buddhas, but in every kind of era, right, once the dharma is lost, once the knowledge is lost, somebody will realize that, and they will be the founding Buddha, and then teach everybody dharma again,
like the enlightener.
Yeah, and that was the concept there, and effectively the Buddha lived his life sheltered from all of this, of all reality, and one day he decided to not escape but go and see the world. And when he went out with one of his guards who was taking him around, and he sees an old person, and he'd never seen an old person before because it was sheltered from him. He's like, what's happened to the person? And they were like, well, he's grown old. This is what happens. You grow older. Wow, okay. And then he sees a procession coming by. Somebody had died. He's like, what's happened to that person? He'd never seen somebody die. Like, well, that person's died. And he sees somebody homeless and starving. And he's like, what's there? And he starts seeing this pain and suffering around him. It becomes unbearable, this pressure on his shoulders. He's just like, what is this suffering? So he decides to leave. He's like, I know that there's something that needs to be done here. And for 6 years, he went into ascetic practices. So he was going from teacher to teacher, and he was gifted as a student. So he'd go to a teacher, the teacher would teach them the practice that they knew of, and he'd learn it at an incredible pace and get to the point where the teacher said, I can't teach you anymore. He'd be like, oh, there's still something missing, and go off to the next one. Then he'd get to the point where he'd started starving himself because he thought through pain and suffering, I'll find this. Starving himself, bringing himself to the brink of death. And at that point, he was so close to dying, and he still wasn't feeling it. He still hadn't got it. And he had this memory of him as a child with his mum in the garden, sitting under a tree. And the memory sparked the feeling that he'd had at that moment of pure bliss, right? Of pure equanimity with everything that's happening. And he was like, that was it. And that didn't require any harsh suffering, right? It was my natural state. So somebody was walking by, and he decided to replenish. So he had some dud and took time to replenish. And then he decided, I'm going to sit under the Bodhi tree and meditate all night. And I'm not going to move from here until I realize the truth. And over the course of the night, he realized the Four Noble Truths, which is all life is suffering. There is suffering everywhere. The root of suffering is attachment. The way out of suffering is cessation from attachment, getting rid of it. And the fourth truth is there is a path to that, and that's where the Noble Eightfold Path comes to be. And it's very similar to what is taught in yoga and Hinduism and Sikhi in terms of the core principles that we must follow, right? And then he spent the next 40 odd years going around and teaching. And so those were taken in and made the Pali canon. And then Buddhism is now split into, I guess, 3 major tranches. The Mahayana tradition, the Theravada, and the Vajrayana. And they kind of mostly go back to the canon texts.
Okay.
And that's how that, and I learned a lot about that, and I took so much, and I was able to apply it and just really feel that kind of growth in myself through that. And then obviously with the yoga increasing and how often I was doing it, the meditation increasing, and then realizing that I wanted to go and learn how to teach yoga. I started learning more about Hinduism, through the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. And it's a very different story there, right? It's about living through your dharma, right? Especially the Bhagavad Gita. It's here is your dharma to be a warrior, right? And get out of your own head, right? this is what you need to be doing, and do it with pure soul and heart in the way that you need to be doing it. And it started teaching me like, how many layers of perception have I got where I treat things as good or bad or this and that because of my belief system, right? But who am I to know that, right? Like, can I take a blank slate to most things and then just see it as what feels like it's creating good, creating harm, like just start applying things without attaching and creating a conceptual idea around things, right? Like, we have a need as humans, most of us, to conceptualize, right? Because that's how we've survived, right? This is an apple. It looks good. I can eat it. I can survive. Food. I can survive. Let's go look at that and start conceptualizing ideas and making them fit in a certain thing. But the thing with all this stuff that we talk about is it doesn't fit in words. It doesn't fit in conceptuality, right? It's like a character in a game realizing that they're in a game and trying to see outside of the game by thinking through coding that's in the game. It's never going to work.
No.
Right? So can you stop that? Not stop, but allow that kind of thought pattern to happen, but don't conceptualize and don't attach to it and just let it happen. And then as I was working through that, when I went to India and started my travels, traveling up north, getting to Punjab, and by this time, through all this different work, I'd come to appreciate like my cultural heritage so much more, right? And I think growing up in the West, and I hadn't realized how much of an impact it had in me not appreciating my cultural heritage. And through that, I went back to Sikhi and started, listening to Kirtans and coming with Mehrinder and reading more into the Bart and reading the translations and everything. And I just realized that it's encapsulating all this truth, right, into this. And all the religions that are saying this stuff are saying it like as it is, right? The truth is the truth. It's difficult to put into words, right? But the one thing I tell a lot of people now is like the beautiful thing about Sikhi is like, I love the fact you could just sing the praises of Vaheguru, right? Because with the songs, it's not only the words, but it's you hear the passion, you hear the soul, you hear everything coming, right? And you just appreciate that love. And love is such a universal language to feel that. And that's how I ended up coming all the way back around.
I remember a couple months ago when we had the Grands by the Kirtan Darbar, and I just remember seeing you sitting at the back like proper in like your samadhi, literally. But could you explain? Because I remember you said you felt something there. So,
yeah, that was my first Grands by. Yeah, I think one thing as I was growing up, I'd been to Gurdwaras, but it'd always been like turning up to a Gurdwara, Matha Tek, and then you kind of sit down for, I don't know, 20 minutes. Yeah. Not even. And then you leave. And also like I guess there was also part of me that was I hadn't connected with any of the Kirtans or anything there. And that's why it was amazing to have done the work of visiting the other religions and visiting different places and really harnessing the practice. And then when I came to the event and sat there and the Kirtan started and I started, singing along and doing the Kirtan, I just kind of, it's like a mantra practice, right? You just fall into the trance of it. And I used like the concentration practice and the breath work to kind of fall into a deeper state. And then I just started connecting with what was taking place, right? And it was a beautiful atmosphere and a beautiful day or evening. and I just continued to sink deeper and deeper into this place where I was kind of connecting with almost everybody's love at the same time towards complete oneness, towards Vaheguru. And just constantly relaxing and letting go, almost like an onion peeling off its layers, right? So anything that was coming up, it was okay. And anything that did come up where I felt any kind of tension, I would give it to Vaheguru. I'd give it and I'd just be like, I can't do anything with. I've tried my whole life to do things with this stuff, and it's not worked for me. So I'm going to give it to you, right? And you do with it what you please, and that turns into my practice. Like it will just come up, and I'll keep giving it, right? Just lovingly giving it like presents, right? And keep giving it, and you just feel yourself light, just working through everything until you just sat there in complete awareness. Because things stop popping up. Because you open a bottle of Coke, and after a while it starts fizzing out.
Yeah.
Right. And then once it stopped fizzing and it goes quiet again, you enter your natural state. Like that. Once you fizzed up a Coke and you've let it go, that point of fizziness isn't its natural state. Right. You've kind of energized it.
Yeah.
And we're constantly running around bouncing up and then letting out a bit and then bouncing up, and we're never letting ourselves just like slow down, rest.
Sounds like a complete sacrifice. Like in that moment, you're just sacrificing everything to Guru Sahib Ji.
That's it.
And no, earlier you're talking about the idea of having a teacher and the importance of somebody who can guide you, right? And that's really important. Even when a famous story of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, when they went to go and see someone, I can't remember who they went to see, but they're talking about this idea that in our lives, because even this whole idea we've been talking about yoga and stuff like that, right? Like, I guess some people, they kind of think, whoa, this has got nothing to do with Sikhi. But the actual word yoga or yoga means jodana, one translation. Jodana means to join. Right? Or another one is, got a few of them down here. One was like malap as well. Literally, malap means to meet.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that's the essence of it, right? Or jatan. Jatan means like effort, where basically the soul is making an effort to become one with the Supreme Soul. Right? So, what Guru Sahib was saying is that all the actions that we do in our life, all these good actions, all these attempts, they're all literally like a zero. Right, so we're accumulating all these zeros, right? And it comes in Japji Sahib, which is like the morning prayer that Sikhs read. Tirath tap daya datadan jeko pave tilakaman. So Tirath means like the cleansing the baths that people would go on to different holy shrines and stuff. Tirath tap, they put their body through these great different penances, these different struggles, right, to obtain whatever they're trying to obtain, right, to fill that hole inside them. But they'd have compassion, but it was compassion for the sake of having compassion. You get that? So, sometimes we have compassion because we know it's a compassionate thing to do, but it's not from a place of compassion. But it's nothing wrong with that, because you have to sometimes start from that place, right? They are datadan, very simply just to give charity. But they're saying, Jeko pave tilakaman, that by doing these things, we only get a sesame seed's worth of honor or blessings for that. So then, what does that mean then, right? Like, what is Guru Sahib Ji getting at? But then they say, Sonia manya man ki ta pao, that by actually listening and accepting what the Guru is saying, then you get pao, you get love. Antaragat tirat malana. Then truly inside you're able to cleanse yourself. You become pure. Going back to that same point earlier about clearing the mind, right? Becoming the idea of complete stillness and peace, right? And then realization. So Guru Sahib is saying that all the things that we're doing, they're like zeros. But the only time it becomes, but then we know zeros don't account to anything, right? It's only until we get Naam. And the only way to get Naam is through a Satguru, is through the Guru. And what is the difference there? That the Guru is just is one. So when you add the Guru, as in the one, that teacher, the enlightened being, then everything that we've done before, it's just like putting a one on the start of it. And then it has a price. It's priceless. And that's very beautiful, the idea that you're talking about, the importance of having a teacher, because I guess at the end of the day, that's the whole point, that we have to become a sacrifice. We have to, Tana Manatan, Guru Amar Das says, a third Guru, we literally have to sacrifice everything to the Guru. And just one last point, because once you were talking, a lot of things are coming in my mind, even either about like a Buddha as well, right? And about, each age or each time somebody is sent to keep that balance. So like even Guru Gobind Singh talks about, they say, Jab jab hot arista para, that whenever there are obstacles for the great saints or just people on this earth, right? Taba Taba Dehe Tarat Avatara, that then God comes and takes a form to guide those people. So whenever there's a imbalance, Vaiguji always restores that balance. Whenever, even if that's on an individual level, they'll restore that balance. So just with that point about Guru Amar Das as well, just the last thing, I kind of go off on a tangent, but it's the idea that, because when I was just listening to your story and I just think about my own story or many people's stories, it's like we kind of going from one place to the other, looking for that truth. And it comes in Guru Bani. He always talks about a Pat who's like a poet called Pat Pikhaji. And they traveled from place to place looking for that truth. Right, so they'll say that Rahio Santa Hotol Saad Bohotere Ditte. I traveled so far and around, and I'd seen many sadhus, many people who've been practicing different types of practice. Sannyasi means those who like renounced the world. Why? Tapasi hai, that they'd other people who would keep penance. Mukho Pandit Mithe, people that would speak very sweet words. Because I'm sure when you went to India or just when you go, you meet many kinds of people, right? Many kinds of people. And they go, Baras Ekaho Pireo, for 1 whole year I traveled. So this is what they're saying to Guru Amar Das Ji. Kine naho pareo layo. And but nobody could really, I couldn't connect no matter where I went. And the next one's really interesting. They go, Kahete ha, kaheti suni. Many people say many things to me. Rehte ko khushi na ayo. But when I'd look at them and what they're practicing, I wouldn't get any khushi, I wouldn't get any happiness because it didn't line up. Right? It didn't matter what they were saying to me, but I didn't feel like it was right. Like I didn't get that peace from them, from what they were saying. Because har naam chhod duje lage. Because all these people, they weren't truly practicing. Har naam, they didn't have naam, that connection. They were connected to the world. Duje lage, tinke gun ho, kya kaho. How could I praise them? How could I truly feel that, these people were the right ones to follow? But then they say that when I met Guru Amar Das Ji, then my life changed. So Guru Dei Malayo Pikya, that now that I've met you, Guru Sahib Ji, Guru Amar Das Ji, they say, Jiv tu rakhe, tiv raho. That now, however you want to keep me, I will stay like that. Wherever it's like what you're saying earlier about like, it's all yours, right? It's quite crazy how by Pikhaji you were saying this is all Jiv tu rakhe. As you keep me, I remain. So as you protect me, I survive. So just whatever you want, right? So it's like these experiences that we see in Gurbani, it's like we can see them today. People are experiencing them. And the idea of just sacrifice.
Completely. It's, beautiful, right? And I think the truth is the truth, right? That's why it's just like, it's not, times have changed and the truth has changed.
Anji.
Right? You might have to apply it differently. Hence, like what you guys are doing now, podcasts and on the channel and everything. You have to figure out how to bring that truth forward. The truth is the truth.
Anji. And that's a really good point as well, because again, even when it comes to Sikhi, we don't say it's a religion.
Yeah.
As well, so we don't even go around saying that. It's just following these practices, right? And what can you take away? How can you connect as well, right? And the truth has always been there from the start of time. It's like another way people put it is that Sikhi wasn't started in 1469. It was started from the start of time. Ard such, right? From the start of time. It's just the truth got lost along the way. And all Guru Nanak Ji came to do was put everyone back on the path. Sab sadhan ko raho bata. Just put all the people who are sadhana. Sadhan means people who follow different practices, right? Techniques and stuff, right? In order to connect. They just come to put everyone literally back on the path. That's why Guru Sahib Ji came again. They came now, and they're still here today because we can connect to them. People connected at different times, right, in their lives, and today we can see that Sikhi, in that respect, Sikhi is still alive, right? Again, not looking at it as a religion, but as that path back to the one, right? So thank you for sharing that story.
Oh, thank you.
I think a lot of people will definitely appreciate that. And I'm sure a lot of people will be going for a very similar situation in their life, because I'm sure it's definitely those times when they hit rock bottom that we start to then introspect and we start to think about our life. So I guess, it's a big blessing, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like in hindsight, and even during the moments as I was there, it's, to me, my way of seeing it is very much karmic consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was needed for me to learn the lessons that I have to learn. Because the way I see it is almost like a karmic contract, where I was like, well, I need to learn this stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because here's the stuff that needs real light shone on it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I get through that.
And just one thing, even the point about the karma and stuff as well, because generally karma we see as two things, like you have good karma and bad karma, right? So you have your sukh and your dukh. Right? And just what I was reading a few weeks ago was that it comes from good analogy. They say sukh dukh samakara janiya. It means to see sukh and dukh as the same.
Yeah,
it's not different. So I was like, what does that even mean? Now, well, we all say that sukh, the same thing, right? But the way it was explained by Saint was that when you have sukh, it's the Guru's blessings. But when you have dukh, it's the Guru's blessings, because all they're doing is taking away all that karma. In essence, that is sukh, because now all we're doing is unloading ourselves, because we've come with a lot of karma. So it's removing all that sin, all the bad actions that we've probably done in previous lives as well. So it's like looking at it in that way, it's just that perspective, right? Okay, sukh, thank you, Guru says your blessings, but dukh, thank you again, because now you're removing all the dukh that was going to be ahead of me in my life, right? And that's a blessing again from the Guru.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a nice way to think of it. And like as others have also said, like, the way that we think about things has to come from almost a comparison, right? We will not know sukh if there was no dukh.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it has meaning as it does. And like the things that from what I've been reading in Sikhi and in different traditions, it's that middle path. You have sukh, you have dukh, and like in the middle, right? How can you sit in the middle of it all?
Yeah.
Right? And be equanimous to it. If one comes, good. If the other comes, okay. Right? How often can you just be like, okay?
It's like in a lot of people say, how can God allow evil to exist in the world? But it's yin and yang, right? There has to be a balance. Like Guru Sahib sent down the Rakesh, the like demons, but they also sent down the Devde. And whenever the Devde got like a hankar or an ego, then they sent the Rakesh down to take that ego from them. And there's always a balance,
Yeah. And like when it comes to my mind about questions like that, because the mind likes to think, I just bring myself back to that, like me and my ego way right now can never comprehend this, right? What is it that is my next step that I can do here? Because trying to comprehend that doesn't work. I know that. Like thinking doesn't do it, right? So what does do it is, can I like use what I have to spread love, right? If I see that there is suffering, can I share love, try and keep things in my heart and work forward, right? Because I'm a noob, right? So
I haven't heard that word since I played computer games.
Yeah, I know. It's such a fun word. But it comes to that. And so like having come from like so many years of being a chronic overthinker, right? I know overthinking doesn't work for me. Most of the time I know like thinking doesn't work for me, right? Apart from when it comes to revision, then it works well.
So make sure you think when you're wise.
So yeah, sometimes it just takes stepping back and being like, oh, can I just again be simple and quiet again and do what is in front of me? And often it can start with like, you said something really great there, which was sometimes you need to start it off in a certain way, right? So like maybe the compassionate act that you had didn't come from pure compassion, right? I see somebody crying, I should go hug them, right? Because I know that's the right thing to do, not, oh, they're crying, let me go hug them, right? Or can I smile and start spreading love? Neurologically, that works.
Mm.
I start to smile, and there's chemicals that are released in the brain to be like smiling, feel better, right? Now, build on that. And that's why things like meta-practice, the meditation practice of loving kindness, right? It's beautiful because what you do is you bring yourself down into concentration, and then you start. There's many ways to do it, and one of the ways I like to do it is I start by imagining my family, right? Because I understand the feeling of love when I think of my family, right? And I understand the feeling of love, not the word love. I understand love, right? And then from there, I take that and I work on myself with that. With every breath in, I'm going to bring that feeling in. With every breath out, I'm going to let out what isn't that in. Bring it, and I feel it go into my toes and my fingertips. And let it go. And then slowly, even the breath out is letting out that feeling of love, right? And I become like that vessel. Then I start bringing in things from around me, from other people where I feel like there's not love around them. Let me bring that stuff that's not love, send love there, right? And you just bring this practice, and you finish this practice after like 15 minutes, and you got the biggest smile on your face because all you're doing is just imagining love, sending love. And if like, you can't say anything if like you've sat down 15 minutes, you get up and you're just smiling and laughing and singing, right? At the very least, you've left with a very good mood.
Definitely.
And there's a famous Sant Mani Singh Ji from the UK, and they always used to say that like doing meditation, doing all these things, the one key thing you need is love. Because without that, it's really difficult to get to progress.
Yeah, even Guru Nanak Dev Ji said a similar thing to Raja Shivnam again. They said that it's like the path of Prema Bhagati is like a bird that goes to the top of the tree, right? But they go the path of just Hat Yog, whose stubbornness is like an ant going up the tree, right? That the bird is just very simple, right? Just Jina Prem Ki Hote Nahi Prat Paya, that through love.
Yeah.
So such a simple concept, such a simple thing, but very difficult to sometimes obtain. Hence why the Guru Sahib says that if you want to obtain that, one of the best ways to do that is through Sad Sangat.
Yeah.
It's through holy company. The other people who are on that path, who have that love, and being amongst those people as well. It comes in Gurbani, Sad Sangat bina, pao na upajay. Means without holy company, Sad Sangat bina, without that, pao na upajay. You're going to have love inside you. It's through Sad Sangat we gain that. Obviously, that's just one example. And then they say, Pav bina, without that love, Bhagat na hoi. You cannot do Bhagati. We cannot truly do devotion. We can't truly have love in devotion. So just on that point then, how has Sad Sangat as holy company played a big part in your life?
Oh yeah. I've like just totally agree with it. With every inch of my body as soon as you said it. There's so many moments that can easily just like knock you off the line, right? Because I mean, ultimately, in my way of seeing it, in material form, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Right? And the only thing perfect is unity and Vaheguru, like God, in that way. And so when you have people with similar mindsets, right, and a belief system of way of life that is similar, it can help you so much, right? And there's so many forms of saying it. Like you read people saying, surround yourself with people that will make you the best version of you, or you are the five or whatever many people that are around you, right?
Yeah.
You're a composition of that. If you surround yourself with people that are loving, that are devotional, that work towards what better goal is there than that goal? I don't understand. Yeah. Then undoubtedly you're gonna get that slipstream to work with, right? And at times it's going to be you that's helping people. At other times it's going to be others helping you. That's the perfect part of it, because it's humbling you and giving you things at the same time as well in Sad Sangat, right? Like you're getting the opportunity to help others and you're being helped. You understand that you're not alone in this. Right? And being alone and egotistical when you're doing it isn't really going to work.
No, at all. No, at all. Because even the point you guys just mentioned about helping each other out, especially being amongst other people, it can be very humbling as well, because we may see how many great qualities they have, not to compare, but to look in the way that, look, I've got so much I still need to do. Or like because especially something that a great Guru Sikh would say to me a lot as well is that, look, you could sit at home and you can meditate and you can think that you're great. You sit for 1 hour or 2 hours and you go into satsang and you meet somebody who's doing it for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And now, okay, I've got a long way to go. Right. So it definitely keeps us in check as well. Because yes, we're helping other people at the same time, when we need that help or we need that guidance, or maybe we start to get a bit of a big head, like, you know what, I'm there, man. I'm quite religious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're not.
No.
Still got a while to go. But it's a part of the journey then.
100%.
Definitely a part of the journey.
100%. And that's where, that thought pattern is so easy to come by, because it's how we're brought up, right? Like, you do well, you do this stuff. Yeah, you're top of the class, right? You get top of the class, you'll be the best.
Yeah,
you be the best, you get the best job.
Well.
Yeah, you get your gold stars, right? And ultimately, it'll bring you happiness. You get the best job, you get the money, you go and do this. And then you see it so often. People are now coming out and being like, no, it doesn't do that. There's more to it, right? There's a lot more to it. And that, just like you said though, there's a nice quote that I thought of when you said, oh, you'll be in the sadsangat and you'll see somebody that's like, you're like, wow, look what they're doing, right? Somebody once said to me, you can only see like the goodness of somebody as much as you have it in yourself.
Yes.
Right?
I heard a very similar quote as well. Yeah.
So like all the goodness I see in you guys and vice versa, whatever it is, right? It comes from within. How else are you meant to feel it? And it kind of goes back to that point of like loving others.
Yeah.
If I can't, and this isn't narcissism, right? Which is a big thing I had to fight with. If I can't understand the concept of love for myself, right? Love being this Davinder, yeah? How can I truly love anybody else? Because I don't understand the feeling of it. So how can I share it with somebody?
The way I've heard it is it's like a mirror.
Yeah.
Like, where have you seen anybody else? It's literally a mirror of what's inside you. Right? So it's quite scary then when you're thinking, like, when you might have negative thoughts and then you remember that point. So actually, whatever you're seeing in that person is actually what you're seeing in yourself.
100%. Then it gives you something to work with. It's a blessing in disguise.
There you go. Comes in Japji Sahib again. Whenever I have dukh or hunger, in whichever way you want to see that, it's all a gift from the Guru, right? Something that I heard, it was very mind-blowing. It was just that everything's a blessing, which obviously is hard to hear in hard times, but it's all a blessing, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's that kind of balance between being positive but being able to see reality, right? It's being positive doesn't mean I'm not going to see that and I'm going to pretend it's positive. It's like seeing what's happening as it is, but then choosing to then say, you know what, that is how it is. Let's see what there is that can be done. And if there's nothing that can be done, let's just sit here in love with somebody, right? Like there's this beautiful project that was started in the States called the Dying Center, right?
Okay.
And the whole thing about it was trying to change the way that death is seen, right? And say, you know what? We're so afraid of death that when somebody says like, oh, my grandma is in the hospital dying, right? For example, like this is a story. And you'll go there and people will come in and they'll be like, you look so good, like it's going to be okay. The doctors will come in and they'll be like, oh, we'll see how this is going. We've got some treatments, blah, blah. And they'll step out the room with the family and be like, got a week to live, right? Nobody will confront it, right? So they were like, can we not just be open with these people, right? Because ultimately they're going back to complete oneness, right? So can you sit there in complete silence and just be with them, right? And just let it happen and just be the vessel for them to experience what they need to experience without having any kind of intention to change what they're meant to be doing.
And a few things you mentioned before we started this podcast about changing your mindset and like changing your habits, and it's linked to your neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So can you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, that's a fun topic. It's a relatively new topic as far as things go, right? It's weird thinking of things that are like 50 years old as new, but when we look at the like universe, we're like not even a speck of sand, right? And so like what's coming to light, and again, I'm reading on this and learning about it now as we go on the course, and just through general research. But I could link some of the stuff if you want, and especially with one of my friends who studies this properly. But what they're finding is they had originally thought that there was
the alleyway is crazy.
Yeah. Somebody's probably just really happy.
No,
or maybe the other way around.
Someone's blocked them in. That's what's happening.
Really?
Yeah, that's what's happening. See what's the cartoon move.
It's like India all over again.
Yeah, I know. You know those big Tata trucks.
Yeah.
That's it. Those scared me. You know, I was learning to drive in India.
Yeah.
With my chacha, and I was driving around Patiala.
Yeah.
And it was an automatic. And anytime these big Tata trucks came, I was like, I'm happy for you to teach me, but when these are coming down the road as they are, right, I'm turning in, because like there's no way I'm going to risk like being on the road. Yeah, those ones scared me.
To be fair, they drive really slowly though, isn't it? Like in India, compared to here, it's like their speed limit's like what, 50 or 80?
Yeah, especially on the roads in Punjab, right?
Yeah.
They're not really bombing it down.
No. To be fair, like I won't jinx it, but it's so like it seems like they know what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, they drive a lot as well, don't they? Like,
yeah, exactly. So it's like there's no such thing as a lane in India, isn't it?
No,
it's just
there isn't.
It's just drive
wherever you can get space.
Well, you see the mud on the road, and you see like
anything goes in it. But it's like a Royal Rumble on the roads, isn't it? Anyone
it.
come in it.
Apart from you don't want to knock people out the lines.
Yeah, that's it, innit? Basically, yeah. What is it? Interference? It's a mod. just come and join. Sorry, carry on.
No, it's fine. So yeah, it's a relatively new concept over the last 50 years, and what they've been finding is that there's originally the thought was once kind of we're born in utero, that's where the development happens for the brain, right? That's where the development happens for most of our body, and as we kind of grow older, by the time we hit adulthood, right, go past teenage years, there's very little, if anything, that can happen to the brain after that, right? There are a number of neurons that we have, which are like the ways that our brain functions and takes information and sends out information, right? You either have afferent and efferent kind of nerves coming in, so nerves that are sending information in and nerves that are sending that information out. You have that number, and then all that starts happening is it kind of just starts dropping off. And this is where they thought like degenerative diseases in the brain come from. And so then what they started finding was if you put, when you were putting the brain under stress, it was kind of learning, right? And these neurons were kind of not so much growing, which is a different thing, neurogenesis. They were learning new pathways, right? And so that's what neuroplasticity is. It's the brain is malleable, it can change. And it's how the brain changes as you put new factors of stress, I would call it, into it. So things that often do this are things that help with our creativity. So learning a new language, right? Or things like yoga or dancing, right? Anything creative, drawing. What else is there? Slacklining is a great one. I've said that twice now. Slackline.
What about like sports, like that are a bit more technical, like maybe like archery and stuff like that as well?
Definitely. Even like a gatka, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to like learn something completely new, move your body in a different way.
Yeah.
What you're doing is like your brain's like created these grooves. Imagine in the sand, like you've created these grooves, right? And you just keep doing the same thing, and these grooves are getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like, well, this is what I do, right? And now you're throwing something new in there, and you're like, no.
It's like creating like new neural pathways.
Exactly, right? And you're effectively just like training your brain to do new things, and then you just like crazy thing is it's almost like electricity in your brain, right?
Mm.
And through your body. And what you're doing is like you're giving it the opportunity to grow, learn new things and become better, and you'll become faster. And that's why the big like topic that was, or point that I was making a number of times, is kind of be willing to learn new things, test and learn, be a child, right? Keep that childlike mindset when it comes to physicality and nutrition and spirituality and mindset. All these things, keep a childlike mind about it, because what it helps you to do is grow and learn and develop, right? And as more and more science comes out, that's the exciting bit, where we take this ancient history, right? Especially from India, where we have thousands of years of history, right? And with Sikhi, we have like hundreds of years of history that's so deep, right? Like we've just been talking about in the Gurbani, it just tells us everything. And then you got this Western science coming out, right? And it's incredible, right? Like they're able to go into detail on this. Like you look at what they're finding out about the universe now, right? In astrophysics as well.
Yep.
Like there's new discoveries being made that are, as of the last few weeks, that are changing the way that we could potentially think about physics, with things like muons, and they're finding out how like what they thought was the formula and what it meant theoretically isn't what's coming out in reality. Therefore, could that explain new things about physics and the way that we see the universe?
Yeah.
Right? There's so much out there that we don't know. And I think that's so interesting when it starts coming together.
And just that point you made, sorry, do you want to jump in? Can I take?
I was going to say something.
Go, you jump in. I talk too much, go on.
There was an interesting study I read about that links to this. They got 2 test groups, and they got the first test group to just sit there, not do anything. And the second test group, they got them to imagine doing a sport. So they got them to imagine like throwing a javelin or something.
Yeah.
And then, so they would imagine it in their minds, and then they would send both test groups out and actually get them to do that action. And they found that the group that was imagining actually performed better, because they had imagined it in their brain and they had built the neural pathways.
Yeah.
And then when they actually did the sport, it was just strengthening that. So even just by, it links to manifestation and all of this stuff.
100%. You're going to say the same thing?
No, I was going to say something else.
No, just on that one quickly though, incredible point. Like the study, I think the original study was actually with like old pianists. Like what they would do, the elder piano players, they'd, rather than playing, they'd imagine the set that they were going to play, and they'd do that, and they'd find it was working just as well.
Yep.
And you see a lot of people, like in osteopathy, they tell us, well, right now because of COVID, it's difficult to go out and try some of the techniques on different people. So imagine you're doing it. Just walk around the room, imagine how you'd be manipulating somebody's spine or neck, or how you'd be testing out the muscle, like active resistance testing and stuff like that on muscles, and just do it just by imagining it and how well it would work.
And just the points you're raising before about when it comes to creative as well. I remember once we was at a mental health talk, and they was talking about how these different types of creative skills are so important just for the mental health as well aspect, especially, learning a new sport and being active and stuff like that. And just afterwards, it was interesting because one of the things just made this interesting point. It goes, but we've already got all this, like in our history when it comes to like being creative. Like that's about the idea of archery, right? Because we were taught archery, right? Our gurus taught archery. Even the idea of like calligraphy.
Yeah.
And if you look at like a lot of the oldest towns in India, the Godara Sahibs, you find beautiful artwork and calligraphy and stuff. Even if you look at old handwritten Swarups of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, they were handwritten. Right, beautiful handwriting, beautiful borders and stuff, right? So like all these things were already there. It's just, I guess today we're just trying to relearn a lot of these things, right?
Yeah.
And just the point about being like a kid, we said this in other podcasts as well. It comes in by Gurdashi's Vara. They go that Pola Pao Gobind Manave. Now through Pola Pao, through innocent love, you'll meet Vaheguru. So it's the idea of that innocent love is very important, or innocence in that respect, right? In every aspect, because once we start getting a bit of knowledge, it can lead to pride in it. Like, I know what I'm doing, right? But it's when we're in that state of always being innocent, always want to be learning, then we take so much away.
Yeah.
Just like I say to a lot of kids at kids camps, I go, you got 2 ears, and one mouth.
That's
So it's
it.
like,
It's a good one.
yeah, literally means you gotta listen more
Yeah.
and be quiet. They still don't.
I mean, that's children though, right? Like
Yeah.
I was with went on a long walk with my little brother, and kids teach you so much. Like I was there walking around, and he was like, "Are we gonna do walk?" And I was just like, "Yeah, we're gonna walk. It's a nice walk." And he was like, "All right." And then he just makes it fun for himself by going and collecting rocks, right? As we're walking around, and I was like, "What are you gonna do with those rocks?" And he was like, "Just rocks. I'm gonna keep them." And I was like, instantly, I thought the only reason you would collect rocks is to do something with them. And he's like, "What do I need to do with them? I just want to keep the rocks." Right? Something so simple, and I'm just like, yeah, wow, you just taught me something there, haven't you? Like, why do I instantly assume you have to do something with something, right? And it's fun.
It might be a bit on a tangent, but earlier you talked about pranayam and stuff. And but what is some of these techniques then, like how to control your breath? Because it's quite prevalent now with like all this mindfulness stuff and like focusing on your breath, right? So what is some practical like techniques?
That's a good question. And you see like loads of famous people coming out with like Wim Hof, for example, you know, they and the science that's behind it, that's backing it now, which says, look, we put this guy in the hospital and tested him by telling him and his students to do these breathing techniques, right? And those breathing techniques actually, through testing it, we proved that he was boosting his immune system. He was improving his mood. Like all this stuff that he was saying that happens is now just being proved that it happens.
Well, just through breathing.
Just through breathing. And so with like yoga, there's like a few different, there's loads that are coming out now with the science being mixed into it, and it's great. With anything when it comes to breath work, it's good to do the research and look at how it's done. Right. It's even better if you do it with somebody that knows how it's done. Right. And so obviously if you know that you've got like any kind of problems, be careful with that. Right.
Yeah.
It's the same with like yoga and any kind of exercise. If I've pulled a muscle, I'm not going to go in.
This is your disclaimer.
Yeah.
My disclaimer.
You're not liable for any harm.
That's it. It's part of my insurance, isn't it?
Same here.
Yeah. So there's ones that you could do, for example, to increase like the heat in your body and the energy, right? So there's things like Kapalbhati, which what you aim to do is you're doing short, sharp, quick breaths, and it builds the heat in your body and builds energy, and it's stomach breathing. So a core way to get into this, like yogic breathing, is breathing stomach and chest, right? Stomach first, then chest. And you're really maximizing it. And the way that happens is like you got your diaphragm, which is like your breathing muscle effectively. And your diaphragm like shrinks and moves out, right? To allow for the space as you inhale. That's how your stomach inflates. And as you exhale, it kind of moves back up and you like let it all out. So as you're inhaling, you want to start learning how to breathe from the stomach first and take full breaths, which like we've become shallow breathers, and you see people and they're just like, and you're like, take a long breath, slow it down, feel the breath come, enjoy the breath, right? So the easiest way to do it, I recommend people to start with, is just to lie on your back, whether it's in bed, whether it's on the floor, and you place like, get comfortable, place one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest, and you want to start first feeling how you normally breathe. So as with everything, just take in that conscious awareness and information of how it's happening, right? And then slowly try and see whether you can start filling your stomach up for 3 count. 1, 2, 3 into the stomach, through the nose, always through the nose. It's 1, the nostril hairs, right? They clean everything, right? 2, it's a better pathway for the breath. So you've got through the nose, and then you take 3 into the chest, right? And then hold it for a second, and then you take it out of the stomach, 3, and then out of the chest, 3. And you start with that and get to the point where it's really comfortable doing it that way, right? Where you can feel that you can consciously breathe into the stomach and breathe into the chest. Then you start increasing it, go to 5, go to 10, go to 20, right? And you get to a point, if you do it for like 10, 15 minutes, you'll be breathing 20 seconds into the stomach, 20 into the chest, 20 out, 20 out. You're doing over a minute for one breath. Crazy, right? So you're just doing this.
What's your personal record?
Oh, I don't know, actually.
You told me before it was like 9 minutes.
I've done. No. That's one of my friends who's a teacher for Pranayaam.
Yeah.
He held it for like he did his course in Bali or Thailand, and he did a 2-month like everyday Pranayam course. And by the end of it, he was like gone for like 8 minutes. Yeah, and you just like go.
Only place I saw this was in Mission Impossible.
Or like David Blaine.
Yeah, you get to do that. Tom Cruise, when you have to go in that water thing. You guys have to train for it. You think go to like 6 minutes or something. That's like that.
But it's completely possible, right? And it's control, and you learn to control your breath. And then slowly, once you get with that, that's like what I would recommend as a start point, just starting to feel how you breathe properly. And then during the day, bring yourself back to it, because like we were talking about, the parasympathetic nervous system, it's a great way just to slow yourself down and just to relax, right? As you do that, like randomly, you could set, the way that I kind of started getting into it was I just use cues in my daily life. Like anytime I went to get water, I would do it. Anytime I went to the toilet, I would do it, right? And I'm just setting mental cues randomly through the day with things that I know I'd just be doing. And I'd use that. And then I'd get to the point now where like my regular breathing is stomach, chest, right? So I'm just breathing like that. And you can sense difference. And then once you've got that, you can start Kapalabhati, which is like just stomach, right? No chest. And you like take the breath in. I'm going to be breathing all over your mic for a second, sorry. But it's like slow, fast exhales. And so, not slow, fast, shallow and fast. So you take a breath in, and then all it is just like explosive. Right? And so you're like pushing the air out, and then the reflex is pulling the air back in. Right? And you're almost focusing on that exhale, and that's building the heat. And also it's like expunging all this old oxygen in your body out, like all the old air that's like stuck. You got to think like your lungs and how air can kind of linger, right? And so that's a really good one. Another one is like Nadi Shodhana, which is I'd normally take my left hand and I'd normally use my thumb on one nostril and my ring finger and pinky on the other, right? And I take a deep inhale, and with the yogic system, you have like two sides of the body, right? And they're like sun and moon. And so depending on the time of the day, you'd start with one nostril. If it's in the evening, you'd start with the other.
Okay.
So in the morning, I'd close my left, start with the right. Maybe I need to check that. But and you'd take an inhale and exhale, and then you close it off. Inhale through the right, then flip. Exhale, inhale. And you just keep doing that. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And you're just, by the end of it, you'll get to the point where like you can hold your finger under your nostril, right? At the beginning, almost like a mini mustache.
Yeah.
And just softly you'll be breathing. And you'll notice normally you've got a stronger exhale or breath out of one of the nostrils. And with exercises like that, you start equalizing it. That your breath, by the end of doing Nadi Shodhana, I always feel like my nasal ways have like cleared up and I can breathe a lot smoother. Yeah. Then when you go and do any of the meditation, the Naam Simran and everything, it's just easier to breathe. And that's, again, calming the system down.
And it's really cool you mentioned these points because, like we said initially about people can be kind of turned off from this stuff. Like, this isn't, we never heard this stuff before. But just like in Gurbani, Guru Sahib says, Asanka Japa. There's many different ways to do japa. There's asanka, jog, man rahe udas. There's many ways to do yoga as well. And jog. And like you're saying, it's supporting you to do your meditation as well. But just for those people as well that may have these, thoughts in their mind, the main point for maybe like I say more of a practicing Sikh is like the essence for us is always the Shabad. Right, so that's why we have Guru Mantar and we have Mool Mantar that Sikhs will do, right? Vaheguru, Ik Onkar, Satanam, or we do Part and stuff, right? But, you know, many Guru Sikhs would recommend using these techniques to help us to like stabilize our mind. Or like you said, now we've opened up our airways. So now we're more comfortable when we're sitting there as well. So these should definitely be tools that we use, and they're not being disregarded or discarded in any kind of way, right? Again, for Sikh, that is our foundations, and that was given to us by the Panj Pyare. But it's not to say that what VG sharing now is like something that's like completely, you know, out there or whatever, right? It definitely has a big link, and we can definitely use these because even the idea of breath work is big in Sikhi. In the respect that in Sukhmani Sahib, they say Saas Saas Simro Gobind. So with every single breath, remember Vaheguruji. Yeah. So it's literally with every single breath that you're taking then. And because now you're so conscious of every single breath, that's with every single breath that you remember Vaheguruji. That all the chinta is taken away from us, from inside us, just by doing swas with each breath. Right?
And actually, it's there's techniques which combine both. Like there's Jugtiya, which, like for example, a simple one is you inhale, you go Vai, and then exhale with Guru.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's links.
Yeah, 100%. And
have you ever tried that before? Like as in doing Vaheguru Simran with this breath work?
Yeah. Like in the mornings, normally I would do some Vaheguru Simran and do Japji Sahib, and I'll use Vaheguru Simran with the breath work.
Okay.
And I'll normally do it on the exhales. It's just a concentration thing, because what you'll find is you'll sit down and your mind will just like fire away, right?
Yeah.
It's like in Zen and a few other traditions, they call it monkey mind.
Yeah, I was about to say it's Bandarvang.
Yeah.
It's like a bandar that just keeps like all over the place.
All it wants to do. And so the best way to like give it something to do, right, is exactly that. You give it something to do that will keep it occupied, right? You need to give the mind a tool. So you give it the breath. And a lot of people will say, oh, you know, but it just drifts away anyway. Well, then you give it more of the breath. You give it every instance of the breath, every millisecond, you try and take in as much information about the breath as you can. Maybe that's at the stomach. You try and feel, okay, on this inhale, I'm going to feel every single part of my expanding stomach, right? And your mind has nothing else to do because you're using all the concentration to go onto this. And then after like 5-10 minutes, it just becomes quiet on its own, right? And then you go into deep Naam Simran because the monkey mind's already gone. Whereas you might sit down at the beginning, and if you're anything like me, if I just went and sat straight down, I mean, it's a bit different now, like after years, but when I was starting, I'd sit down and my whole meditation would be my mind playing tricks on me, right? And so for the 5 minutes of doing a bit of pranayam, a bit of breath work, you'll gain the concentration to have a really, really deep session of purely being with Vaheguru.
And how has this affected your sleep? Is it like, do you find that your sleeping patterns are better, or you sleep less now? Do you have more energy in the day?
Yeah, I mean, sleep's definitely improved. I would say I'm like a much better sleeper, right? And I think that's probably because like my routines improved. I don't think it's too dissimilar to your guys, where I'll be up early, 4:45-ish. Probably you guys are up a bit earlier, but 5, right? And
he's still awake at that time.
He's still awake. That's it. No rest. But like I'll get up at that time. And it's beautiful. It's quiet, right? Especially now, the sun's like, you know, you see the sky, and then because of that, by the time it gets to like 9 in the evening, I'm ready for bed.
Yeah,
right. It's not like I'm forcing myself into bed, right? Maybe lockdowns helped as well because you're like, there's nothing to do, right? Am I going to go play COD again? No. That's why I got rid of my PlayStation membership. But the sleeping's definitely improved, and at the beginning, anytime I would have like a restless night, for example, right? Or like as I was traveling, I'd be staying at hostels, and you'd get loud rooms, right? There's nothing you can do about that. So then I just use the breath work and be like, let's go back into the breath. And within 5 minutes, I was asleep
Mm.
because, you're just going. And then you just feel yourself sinking back and back and back.
Mm.
And you're in bed.
My Guru.
There's this technique I remember seeing by this Swami, and he said that you imagine each body part, and then you imagine it going to sleep.
That's it.
And then you start from your toes and you work up.
You need to try that. Director. Our director has insomnia, innit? So
Really?
he needs to start practicing.
Trying to get those gains all the time.
I think we'll wrap it up here then.
I was going to wrap it up with just
That's
one
it.
final question. Thank you so much, first of all. 100% I've taken a lot away from this. It's very inspiring.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. Just one question I thought would be nice is like in your journey now, again, we had things that we want to talk about. We didn't get to talk about everything, but that's fine because that's why we've got the rest of our lives, hopefully, to do that as well,
Really?
right?
We can have you on again.
There you go,
If
right?
you would have me, it'd be lovely.
I think definitely when it comes to like Sangat asking questions, then it would be a good, like, when you come back later on, as in like, these are some things that were asked. So like follow-ups, but then now, because we just learn more about each other and then the conversations build. But I thought it'd be nice to finish with like, thank you so much for sharing your journey. But like, what is next? What do you feel like right now is next for you in your life, in the life of Davinder Singh? Have you thought about that, or what do you see in your future? Do you have like an idea of that? Do you think about that, or do you just live in the present moment?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Well, first, like, thank you for having me on. It's always nice to talk about things with people that appreciate the same things, like we're talking about with Sadhu Sangat, right? It's just nice to talk with people that have the same kind of ethos. And I learned so much from you guys as well. So it's always fun going home inspired. One thing I learned on my travels and was beforehand, I was setting things and being in a rush, right? And I really realized like there is no need to rush. And there's nothing inherently wrong with setting a goal, but the attachment to the goal is where the suffering comes. That, like I was talking before, right? Attachment. But I'll have set some kind of goal. So for me right now, I'm doing this osteopathy course. I'm doing my yoga teacher training. I'm working at the same time, and I'm very fortunate to have a great job with a great team. Right. But the aim would be to be able to get to a position where I can help people understand their body and health, what health means to them, and get them then to work with that, including with their mind, and just start living consciously in the moment, being in the moment, however that happens. Ideally close to nature and the sun, like we talked about as well. And so that is like some overarching goal that feels right at the moment. And if that is to change, then it changes. Whatever, as long as I'm doing what I know in the moment consciously feels right, that's all we can ever be doing, right? And I'll be aiming to consciously take that step forward that's in the moment. Then you can always look back and think, well, I was conscious in that moment. I knew what I was doing and it wasn't creating harm. So whatever came from it was what was meant to come from it. And try and release the attachment to whatever else is to come.
That's really nice.
Proper deep, but really good at the same time. Anything else from yourself?
That's all good.
Okay. Thank you so much, Davinder Singh, for coming on this podcast.
Thank you.
Any vichar that we've done, anything that we spoke about, if you made any mistakes or offended anyone, then please forgive us. Just finish with a fateh, and then hopefully we see you soon.
Of course.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.